dinner plans, it's all personal, make dinner plans without actually looking at the calendar. Oh. Hey, Tom, how are you today? Yeah, that different Tom.
All right, it's 4 o'clock. Hi, everybody. Call this meeting of the New Sharon Town Council to order. Today is Wednesday, February 7th, and it is 4 p.m. Our first matter is of interest to the council, but also everybody who's here, I would imagine. The legislature passed, I think more than one act, but at least one act that requires towns across the state to change their zoning ordinances to comply with some new state requirement. Those of you who have been watching know that we scheduled these ordinance changes for public hearing. Is it for the 21st?
Yes, that's right.
And it occurred to me and to Millie and to Jan and others that a public hearing is not exactly the best place for members of the council to sort of first learn about sort of the background and what might have been the rationale and what the planning board's recommended ordinances are and how they would operate. So at short notice, Karen and Allison and Jen agreed to come and sort of walk the council through some of these, through all of these changes, and then give council members an opportunity to ask questions, because there are a lot of questions. I had the opportunity to be at planning when these were discussed, so I know maybe a little bit more than most, but it is, these changes are, this is no comment as to whether they're worthwhile. It's just they are significant and will have an impact. And I think knowing that as council members is essential, because we will get questions about this. And by the way, not just after the public hearing, but perhaps for quite some time as land use behavior changes, as it always does in response to ordinance. So Karen, I don't know if I'm picking on you first or Allison, but with that introduction, thank you and Allison and Jen. And I know that there was a state provided ordinance consultant who's been working on this as well. I know this ain't easy, and I really appreciate your work.
Thank you. Yeah, everyone's been working really hard along with your consultant, Weston Sampson, to get the town in shape. As you indicated, there were several new laws enacted by the legislature last year pertaining to zoning and land use. Many of those changes took effect January 1st. They do mark significant changes to zoning and land use as practiced at the municipal level. The zoning ordinance amendments that are before the town council now are because legal process dictates that the town council adopt zoning ordinance amendments. So the process, for those of you that aren't familiar, your planning board takes up a draft amendment to your zoning ordinance. They make a recommendation to the council. That draft then goes before the council, and it is up to town, city and town councils to adopt zoning ordinances. So that's why you are seeing what you're seeing come before you. The amendments that were made generally include the following changes: definitions of various project categories, including major and minor land development projects and subdivisions. Changes associated to application and review processes for these projects, development plan review process changes. There's a new thing, well, not so new, but now mandated, called Unified Development Review for projects requiring zoning relief, as well as approval by the planning board. Revised procedures for appeals, modified procedures for public notice of applications, technical review committee composition and appointment. What is before you currently, we are calling tier 1. Those changes are being made to bring your ordinance into compliance with the new laws, including changes in the process to obtain zoning relief, and what relief may be granted to the applicants and by whom. There is a lot of work to be done. Weston Sampson is drafting kind of the liftoff document, and then staff is reviewing and making changes that staff believes are appropriate for the town of New Shoreham.
That's phase 2, or is it, you know, are there 2 different phases to this one and then the next one?
Yeah, I almost think of it as almost 3, due to the number of ordinance amendments required to bring you into compliance. The tier 1, which are before you now, are really the ones that Weston Sampson identified as the most important. In a couple of cases, if you don't have them in place, they do have some repercussions legally for the town. So it made sense to start with those. The second tier will come after this. And then I believe there's kind of going to be a third tier where it's cleanup. Things that just were unforeseen, maybe some language things that need to be addressed. So you will be seeing waves of these come before you over the next few months into 2024.
I have just one quick question, and I'm not sure whether it's for you or Allison or Jen. And I'm not asking you as an expert, what was the rationale for this? You know, because these are pretty substantial changes. What was the rationale in state government around this?
So my understanding is that the rationale was twofold. One was to increase housing stock across the state, and also to streamline the permitting and development process for individual applicants that are trying to develop property.
So what's the best approach? You want to walk us through this proposed ordinance, Karen?
Yeah, I think, you know, let's just talk really quickly. The ones before you, there are some new sections, and then there's some amended sections being amended. So you've got a new section on permitted uses. You've got technical review committee, a unified development review, and land development projects. Those are all new to your ordinance. Then you got a few that are just being amended. General criteria for special use permits, earth removal, procedures for special use permits, development plan review, and modification permits. So I don't know if you want me to just kind of go through generally what the high level changes, or if you have questions, I'm happy to do either.
For me, I think going through for high level changes would be very, very helpful.
Okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
whether others agree, but
Could I just get one, this is Martha, one question clarified before we begin? Everything we have before us right now is state mandated, is that correct? Or we had this problem several years ago when they tried to slide something else in that wasn't state mandated. And
So-
it took us several months to undo it.
Okay, so the majority of the zoning amendments that I believe are before you right now are state mandated. I do think there is one, the ADU ordinance, that is before you. That is not a state mandated change. The timing was just such that it came to be around the same time as the state mandated changes.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one we'll deal with is permitted uses. This is a new section added to include and identify permitted uses that are required to be allowed in all zoning districts. The language was mirrored from state law amendments, so not a lot of discretion there. The second one is general criteria for special use permits. This section in your ordinance was amended so that each category of special use permit has specific and objective criteria. This was a rather big change in that the legislature said okay, before cities and towns could set their criteria on how to approve a special use permit. And you can still do that, but the criteria have to be specific and objective. So you had about 10 uses in your use table that required special use, would require a special use permit if you wanted to do it. And those needed to have new specific and objective criteria created. The rest of the uses do already have criteria. And I think we'll be looking at the existing text to make sure that there are additional changes to be made, but we're going through that second part of it after we get the 10 special use permits in your ordinance with the necessary criteria. Earth removal apparently is a special use section that was amended to the criteria were specific and objective. There are new procedures for special use permit was an amendment. The new state law requires unified development review. Your ordinance has been amended to include unified development review. Unified development review is a new process to New Shoreham. It's been on the books for a while. Some towns, I don't think that many, maybe a couple adopted it. Now it's mandated. What that means is that if you are coming to the planning board with a land development project, you need planning board approval, but you also need some sort of zoning approval. In those cases, you don't bounce back and forth between planning and zoning. You stay at planning, and the planning board has authority to grant zoning relief for that application. That's a big change for you. Technical review committee, there is a
Sorry.
there is a state law mandate for technical review committees. So the council, as part of these amendments, is being asked to basically create it and then give the planning board the oversight and ability to appoint. And there is a list from which the planning board can pick. And the composition of the TRC is all in the draft ordinance. Development plan review is being changed. It used to be development plan review was DPR. Now there are formal and informal versions. The informal DPR will be an administrative process. The formal DPR will be a planning board process. And then modifications,
With a question, Karen?
what, I didn't hear that.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Absolutely.
So back in the draft, we have Article 4 criteria for special use permits.
Mm-hmm.
We have A and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish, and 8. Those are now, if this were to pass, those would be compliant with the state law in terms of specific and objective criteria.
So there has been no challenge to specific and objective legally. And this is a source of much discussion in the land use and zoning world. What is specific and objective? I will tell you that your criteria that exist currently under 401A are pretty standard across most cities and towns pre-January 1. It remains to be seen what is going to happen going forward. I have checked a couple of other towns. They have kept some of the similar criteria that you have here under 401A. But it's not, there is no definition in the state law of specific and objective. And like I said, there's been no legal challenge that we can rely on a court case for that. So
I hate to be flippant about this because it's, but basically we're waiting for at some point someone to sue on one of these in our town or another town to see whether these are specific and objective enough. Is that
Correct.
Yeah,
That's, that's correct. And there are, it's not just this
It's an
section. There
approach, I
are,
guess.
this is happening. I have associates coming into my office
Sure.
almost daily saying, I'm noticing this does not match up. So we are anticipating, these issues to be worked out, hopefully in the next few months, year. But for now, all we can do is take the language specific and objective and make sure that you are. If you notice, at 401A, change was made by the planning board because of this issue to say that the following items, one down, will be considered when reviewing and deciding on an application for a special use permit as a permit guideline. That was the thought behind that was let's keep them for now. Let's keep them as guidelines. And we will move forward understanding that any special use permit that comes before the planning board will need to apply specific and objective criteria.
So has anyone, or what's that?
I thought zoning had to be objective. That there was a whole thing with zoning. That you have the law and you follow the law. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're just making more and more paperwork. The what? I just,
Do you know whether there's, I'm sort of speaking for Jen here, sorry, Jen, but is there a readily accessible or readable new guide for members of planning and members of zoning? Because this is, that to me, it's a fundamental change in the way that these things are heard. And that's not value laden when I say it, but it's important to acknowledge that it is a change, and it may be confusing and frustrating initially, I assume, Jen, you know. Yeah.
Maybe I could help answer that. There is on Rhode Island Housing's website some resources there. So they did make short videos for planning board members, zoning board members, administrative officers to kind of explain how their role may change. And then there's, summaries for all of the different legislative changes. And so there are some resources on that.
So
that
Rhode Island Housing has that?
Yes.
Great.
Part of the MTAP program, which is what we had applied for to have Weston and Sampson help draft our ordinances. So they were the ones that firm did develop those resources in addition to the templates that they're using to help customize our amendments.
Good to see you, by the way, Allison. How are you?
You too. Okay. Thanks.
So I don't know whether this is an unfair question, Allison or Jen or Karen, but what are the things that stand out to you in this proposed new ordinance as, wow, that's a change? Is that fair?
Sure. I think some communities initially were concerned about the special use permits, that being kind of a heavier lift, having to develop criteria for each of the, so having that specific and objective criteria for every use that a town says requires a special use permit. So in New Shoreham's case, we already had a lot of specific and objective criteria for a lot of the uses that were listed for requiring a special use permit. It was just those 10 that we had identified that didn't have it, there was around 10 that didn't have any. So we want to make sure we got something drafted there so that otherwise, if a community, if there were no criteria for the municipality to decide whether or not to allow that application, that special, that use, it would be allowed by right. So that was kind of a big concern as far as
Right.
Wanting to mitigate that. In some cases, some towns had like 100 that they're just going to have them do like just not permitted for now until they have time to develop all those. In our case, there weren't that many, so hopefully we can, you know, move those along, so we have that implemented. I would say for the biggest change, would be what's considered a minor, major subdivision and minor subdivision, so they really did move up, like, having to have 9, you know, lots versus 3. It's considered, most things are going to be there won't be many, if all at all, major subdivisions any longer, and that's what goes before the planning board. So more administrative review and approval for development projects that had gone to planning board.
So just one kernel that I think is important to pull out for the community when we're thinking about these things is that there are significant negative implications of not acting. You know, in other words, we're like, if we don't act to construct our own in accordance with the statute will govern it, and we're no longer in control of our own approach to this.
So when it comes to the special use permit criteria, if you don't have them in place and someone comes in for that use, it is no longer a situation where they have to get a special use permit. It's just allowed by right. So that's why
Karen?
that's why this one was in tier 1.
Karen, this is what I didn't understand it the first time you said it. And I hoped I'd understand it the second time, but I still don't. So even though the state has standards, if we don't adopt standards, somebody can just get approved
No, what
by right?
No, the state is saying that you have to have a certain type of criteria, specific and objective criteria for special use permits. And if you don't
Yeah.
have those in place, you have to allow the use by right.
So if a community
Yeah.
says, okay, this, you know, within your zoning ordinance, you'll have those uses permitted by right in each of the zoning districts. Then you have, these are the uses that are allowed, but only by special use permit. So when somebody wants to have that use in that zoning district, they, you know, what it is you want to have, okay, what are the rules I need to abide by in order to, and what is the planning board and zoning board looking at when we are applying for this special use permit to decide whether or not they'll grant that special use permit? What are those, what's the criteria for granting the special use permit? That needs to be laid out in the zoning ordinance. It can't just be up to the, you know, up to the town without it actually being part of the ordinance. So there's no specific, the state doesn't have specific and objective criteria for
Okay.
for any use. It's something that the municipality has to come up with on their own. So that language you see there is something that is just language that we have drafted. It's not, you know, it's not a template, that those aren't, that's not required standards for each of those uses. Those are, they're just saying you have to have specific and objective criteria, but you need to come up with it on your own.
Gotcha.
So those can be modified, you know, that's just what we've drafted. I mean, they can change, you know, you can add to them, you can take them, you know, those can be amended. Those aren't, that language isn't state mandated language. It's just the state mandated that we need to have specific and objective criteria.
So was the idea that there was at least a feeling at the among some at the legislature that there were towns who were using these criteria to foreclose or make more difficult the development of affordable housing?
Maybe more so that the list of that a lot of municipalities were overutilizing the special use permit. So saying, yeah, we'll have this use, but it has to be by special use permit. So I think maybe the hope was that they would move more uses to be permitted versus, you know, to encourage development, maybe.
I see. Gotcha. No,
Yeah.
that's really helpful, Allison. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but yeah. Can you guys Karen, I think you started this and I probably interrupted you, but can you walk us through what at least two, or Allison, what the two steps will be, and you said maybe a third cleanup? So we have this one. And then we'll have a second one in the next several weeks, say, or next several months. And then we'll have potentially a cleanup. What will the second one be focusing on?
I don't have that list in front of me.
We
Allison,
do
you
have, yeah, Weston and Sampson
Doesn't-
put together a table. I don't, it's like a spreadsheet, 1 or 2 pages. It's a couple pages long. So you should have that, or will have that in your packet. That kind of gives you an idea of what's before you and what's coming. So tier 1 is highlighted in gray, and then tier 2, white background. So it's additional zoning amendments. So some of it is, you'll see section 202 definition changes there. Those were things that were, for now, less of a priority because we can refer to state law, like state law is going to dictate it. And so there's no issue with not having it implemented. We just, go back to state law. But there are still some important, obviously, amendments coming beyond just definition changes. Just had to divide up the work a little bit and just wanted to get some things implemented and adopted. Not waiting till the entire package was complete before you adopted some of the zoning changes.
Sure. So if I have a project that's going to require an advisory from planning and then approval by zoning, I will now go to planning and can have both done?
It depends. If you
Of course
need
it does.
gray areas, if you need planning approval, then yes, you'll stay with planning. If you don't need planning approval and all you need is the zoning relief, then you would still go to zoning to get that relief.
So is that a lot of files? No. I mean, that's important to sort of, it's so hard to divine the magnitude.
Well, initially, we thought it was going to be all special use permits going to the planning board, because they had either development plan review or advisories,
Right,
but that's.
okay.
So. Cherry the Lane. Jen, can you
Or come on, feel free to come
would
up,
be one that would have followed that process, where everything would have went to the planning board. Because
Gotcha.
it's needed in the subdivision.
Uh-huh.
This is kind of a broad question, and I'm jumping all over the place here. Definitions, for example, the landscaping buffer height width, is that something that state, or did that come from here, or did that exist?
Not sure.
Um,
The
There are
6 foot,
definitions?
well,
Oh.
no, I'm just kind of going through papers. Assembly hall, that sort of thing, or between districts, between,
Yeah,
this is the sort of thing, I just want to be sure that's something that came from somewhere else, because it's kind of outrageous, but
it's, those are,
I
what
think-
I was explaining, those are specific and objective criteria that were developed. We drafted, the staff planning board, Weston and Sampson came up with those. So, but that's where I was saying is, it's not state law language. State law is saying you need to have specific and objective criteria. If you're gonna say something is allowed by special use permit only, you need to have specific and objective criteria. And so that is language that has been drafted that is completely flexible as far as what is there, what's not there. It's just, it needs to, again, whatever specific and objective criteria is, we can't really define that, but something that, when you look at an application, you can say if this meets it or not, and not too much gray area as far as interpreting whether or not it meets the requirements for that special use permit. So,
Okay, that was a
yeah.
question I was trying to get at in the beginning. Is there a
Yeah.
way of telling what is mandated by the state and what was very specifically done here?
So, yeah, Karen, I mean, that in some cases, you know, it's pretty easy to kind of highlight, like, everything in there is to address state law, but it's not like we can highlight what is specific language from state law but in some, it's kind of hard, right, Karen, as far as like, there are changes that, you know, you're making, language changes that are not language out of state law, but they're a result of trying to make the zoning ordinance comply with state law. So we have in the drafts highlighted in some cases, like Weston and Sampson will say, okay, here's where the town needs to make a decision. Something needs to go here if you want it to go. Like, you need to put something in this section to address this, but it's up to the community. Like, there are some things that are policy decisions, you know, for the local community to make. So, you know, I think that's what, we can highlight where there was a policy level decision. But again, they're all changes that are in an effort to address state
Right.
law, you know, so.
Yeah, so in other words, the state law says you're required to have something that looks like this. And you and Karen and the consultant went through it, and Jen, and in the planning board, and said, okay, we have to have something that looks like this. Here's something that looks like this. And then it's a policy decision about, you know, what that ends up being, but it needs to live within the four walls of the statute.
Yeah. So
That's
they're not,
right. So
yeah.
if you have a specific question, like I think it was mentioned, maybe like assembly halls under your special use permit amendment that's before you under D1. You know, the items under D1, A through E, those were developed by Weston Sampson staff planning board. Those are something that everyone felt would be a good place to start for assembly halls. If you have a, you know, commercial radio and TV, same thing. Those criteria, A and B, were something that had to be drafted to come into compliance with state law. Those specific items, that language under assembly halls and commercial radio, TV, and the rest of them, that language doesn't exist in state law. That is
Right.
something that the town has been asked to draft. So if you have a question about whether you have discretion to change something, you know, just let us know. We can let you know whether that's state law language or town language.
So I'm sorry to keep asking these questions, but hopefully it's helpful. But the thing that concerns me about this is nothing in particular in the language, but we're a community that has actually that embraces affordable housing and wants to do stuff on affordable housing. And we've been able to the extent that where we've been successful, to do that in a manner that's consistent and harmonious with our history and the way our land looks and all that. And I just would be, that's the thing that worries me, that this will set up a falsely adversarial thing around our kind of land use rules. And, you know, Jen's shaking her head, so I shouldn't be worried. Right. Right.
I think what my ultimate test on a lot of these things is, and I know this, a lot of it's irrelevant because it is between residential zones and commercial zones, but and we look at the front street, or we look at, well, particularly the front downtown town. Could it be built today? And what would have to be done to put it, if it didn't exist, could it be built today? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I don't know if that test was applied to these. I mean, I have a personal thing about landscaping taking over the island. And it's destroying the streetscapes, it's destroying everything. As far as I'm concerned, you can't see the beautiful old houses anymore because they've got these big old hedges. Then the neighbors want things screened so you can't see anything except hedge. It's turning into Watch Hill out here. And I just don't know where, I don't know where it's coming from, 6 feet wide and 6 feet high. And that's it just jumped out at me like a, is this ordinance rift with such things? And Jen probably is the only one that can really answer that in terms of Block Island.
Did we apply each?
No, I mean, what are the things that were thought of with these things?
We thought about trying to get something to the town council as quickly as possible.
Thank you for an honest answer.
Because we want to drive
That's-
the bus, we don't want someone else to drive it for us, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
that's,
Allison, so all
perfectly
these,
reasonable.
all these proposed changes have been cleared by our planning board, discussed at the planning board by you, the two of you and the planning board, right?
All of the zoning ordinances, yes, the zoning ordinances that have been sent to you were reviewed by the planning board and received a vote out, as a positive recommendation. Yeah, I mean, we did have an initial draft from objective and specific objective criteria that were, we did obviously consider what would be appropriate for Block Island, and
Sure.
we did actually amend quite a lot of what was in the original draft because it was not appropriate for Block Island. Just I can't think. I'm trying to think of some.
No, I was there. I mean, I
Some
thought.
examples, but
Yeah.
we did have to change quite a bit. So, but if there are things that, again, these are flexible,
I have one.
we can make further
13.
changes.
So under assembly halls, it says exterior lighting shall be dark sky compliant. Is there a reason that doesn't carry through on everything? Since, the
Yeah.
lighting, nighttime lighting is an issue.
Yeah.
Is there some reason why that doesn't carry through on everything? Since it's, it's sort of been an articulated problem that people have light pollution and, would we want to carry that through? Is there a reason why we wouldn't want to carry that through on all of this?
I guess it depends. I mean, the community, it's a good question. I know it's something I looked at. The community you have an existing outdoor lighting ordinance that applies to everything. So, and then in some cases, maybe some of those uses you wouldn't anticipate necessarily, evening lighting for certain uses like a daycare center or something, but we can, certainly that can be added into the other uses listed, because I know that is a priority, but if you go through some of those uses, some might be more applicable or not.
Sure.
that are evening uses that would require exterior lighting.
Yeah, that one also jumped out at me, but not in the same way. Mine was what happened to the lighting ordinance that we have. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So why do we have that? I mean, my point out, it seems to be only in one place.
Mhm.
And if we already have the ordinance, why do we need it? This sort of redundancy that could turn into a conflict.
Well, because in this case, it's located here. So that when the permitting body takes up a special use permit for that use, they know that that particular criteria has to be met. Not that it doesn't have to be met because you've got a lighting ordinance, but that box has got to be checked at the time that the use is permitted.
I know we had that originally there were parking standards within each of these uses, and we said, you know what, we already have, our parking standards in another section. We don't want to have it in both sections. And then, who knows down the road if you amend one part of the zoning ordinance, we're trying to avoid that as well. So we don't want to have it, duplicated in different sections. But
So
again,
under-
just trying to come up with specific and objective
Mhm.
criteria for deciding, whether or not that use is allowed in, in reviewing an application.
Sure.
So something similarly, probably complicated is the under earth removal. The hours of operation. If we wanted to change that, that's something we'd have to go back and change in the ordinance as it exists, right? So in here it says 7 AM to 6 PM.
Mhm.
So that is something that I get calls from people about. Why is somebody out there, with a backhoe at 7 o'clock in the morning? Because they're allowed to, right? But like, so if we were to change our ordinance to reflect a later time in the morning, we would change this, right?
Yes, you could amend, yes, you
Yep.
can change this.
Right, right.
If you don't agree with those hours of operation, certainly now is the time to modify.
don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, we could do 8 to 5.
Well, no,
Or,
I'm just
I'm
saying, like,
not
that's
saying we
actually
want to, but
something I've
yes.
gotten phone calls
Yeah.
from people at 7 o'clock in the morning. I get those phone calls, which is terrific too. So anyway, that's something I
You
think we
need
should
to
change.
be able to tell people who call that we just passed a new ordinance that they can't call you at 7 AM.
Okay, I know this is probably totally, Keith. Keith, honest to God, totally and completely unworkable, but I think I'd be just as concerned about, I know we can't, there's got to be a way of somehow tying some of these things into after dark.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
I'm talking about instead of, and this comes up with ordinances, it comes up with noise things, it comes up with all kinds of things
Oh.
that if you're doing earth removal, and is it the noise or is it going to be the lights? Because you're not going to be out there at 5 o'clock in December, hoping you can get the hole dug before the frost, if the frost ever comes back, hits. And sometimes it just seems like we take these arbitrary times that have nothing to do with the natural world. And I mean, yes, time, of course, is a constraint that was created by man, but let's put that aside for the moment and just say we're talking about a time on a clock instead of the time that the sun rises and sets, and the time that what's going to be a nuisance in June isn't going to be, what's going to be a nuisance in October is not going to be a nuisance in June because of the daylight and the sun. If you have somebody outside in the yard playing around, or somebody having a wedding reception for that matter, if the music is later in June, it just doesn't seem anywhere near as bad as October. I live near one of those venues and I've noticed the difference. And I'm not somebody who goes to bed early, so it doesn't.
Well, we should talk about that when it's, when we,
Well, like these are the kind of things that get in here and then we'll talk about it later. We never do.
well, so that's part of the reason that I wanted
Yeah, I
to
think
do
it's a
this
good
today.
idea.
Is so that we could flag these things and learn about it. And then if there are changes we want to make, we will have been, somewhat more educated in the background and rationale.
And also to what Martha was just saying, how about for emergencies? I think that's where you were going with the scope of work and the time. It might go into the after hours or after sunset.
Mhm.
Earth removal, this is under a special use permit. I think you're thinking about like starting construction or digging a foundation or
Yeah,
digging a hole
That's
for
what I-
something else. I don't know if it's the same thing. So,
For me, the whole daylight thing is much broader than just this item. It applies across the board with all kinds of things in town, and this is just one of them. And once you memorialize it in one place, it's going to float over to others.
So are you wanting to make changes now, or are we thinking about a
No,
different
it-
meeting to make?
it's not
changes then?
before us and we
Okay.
can't. This was really, I just thought, this stuff is not insignificant. And I have experienced since I've been on the council, sometimes, I don't feel like I have a lot of background before the public hearing, you know what I mean? So I really just wanted to take half hour, 45 minutes to sort of walk all of us through what the changes are so that we have some similar baseline among the four of us. So that we're not a totally that the hearing isn't the first fresh look we get at.
Got it.
You know, that was really my
How
rationale.
many items are in the tier one section?
Karen?
Oh, sorry, Mrs. Ring, how many items are in the tier one section?
I have 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sections of the zoning ordinance, how many different sections are amended?
Oh, sections or actual ordinance? I have amendments that were submitted to the clerk. I have 6 sections. I'd have to count them. Unless Allison knows them.
But 6 substantive areas of amendment.
Correct.
Any other questions before? Kim, come up. We have a question from the audience.
It's just a general question, listening to the conversation about objective and specific. Can a reference, a cross-reference be objective and specific? I mean, could the section be, you must comply with the lighting ordinance for this special use? And so make the, do you understand the question?
Yep, I'm following you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in certain instances in these 10, there are references to, say, noise. And what it says is that you cannot exceed the noise level under the noise ordinance. But because these are for someone who's coming before the town to get permission to do a new use, we are also requiring that a plan be submitted to show how noise is going to be mitigated so you stay in compliance. So the lighting, same thing. I think where you can ask an applicant to provide a lighting plan showing that there's not going to be any spillover at the edge of the property. That's also a pretty objective thing to submit. So yeah, it's a great point. And we did try to incorporate references to other ordinances and require some evidence that they intend to comply and they can comply.
That's great. So, yep. Any other questions from the council or from community? Mary Ann, you have a puzzled look on your face.
Because I'm just, I don't know what an earth removal is. I was just trying to think of an example of what an earth removal would be.
Joe Spring, that he had. Yeah, I haven't ever.
Yeah, so some of these areas don't really. Yeah. Yeah, right. All right, going once, going twice. Karen, Allison, Jen, thank you guys so much for your work on this. I know this was kind of dropped on you, and this was very helpful, at least to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Time.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Hi.
All right, our second matter is Chief Dean. How are you? You want to just pull up a chair? How do we want to do this? Just pull up a chair. Let me sit. Here. Come on. Pull up
I'm good right here.
All right, fair enough. First of all, welcome, congratulations. I think I mean, you know this better than I do, Paul. We try to meet regularly as the season approaches to, to see kind of, this will be the first, I'm sure, of more than one. I don't know if you just want us to ask you questions or you want to how you want to do this. Because like, you know, Millie did put in a number of potential issues. And I think then there are these sort of specific issues, but then there's the broader, like, how's the recruiting going to go this year? What's the market? How's all that stuff going? So I guess I'll start with my favorite. The thing that I get the most consistent complaint calls about is Weldon's Way. And I've said this to you before. It's like, and it doesn't matter. It's people who are here year round. It's people who are renting. It's people who are here for the summer. It is the stone in everybody's shoe. And you've witnessed it for long, at least as long as I have. And it just seems like we can't wrap our arms around the chaos there. And I'm just curious, whether you're thinking about new approaches there.
Well, I will say this, I have spent the majority of my career working nights.
Yeah.
So usually when I come on duty,
Right.
Weldon's
Yeah,
Way
yeah.
fiasco
Sure.
is
Sure.
done and over with, and everyone's on the boat and gone home. Having been here as long as I have driven through town.
Yeah.
On a number of occasions and witnessed it. And my intention for this summer is there is no magic bullet to fix
Right.
this.
Yeah.
The magic bullet is wave a wand, the mopeds disappear, 600 cars a day
Right.
disappear, and 1,000 people a day disappear.
Right.
None of that's going to happen.
Right.
So we need to try to figure out how we can manage all of this in the little tiny place that was built for horse and buggies.
Yeah.
When you look at our infrastructure and our roads were built for horse and buggies. You go back and look at a lot of the old pictures, they're the same roads.
Yeah.
So we've grown as a community, our infrastructure has not.
So that's a really important point. Here's the thing that I've been driven crazy about and that I get calls about. You're on Chapel Street, you turn onto Weldon's Way, and someone who works for one of the moped rental companies puts up their arms and tells you that you cannot drive down a town road because they are training. Jesus, I hate to even use that word. But because they're using the road now, people have to wait. Or you travel down Weldon's Way, say toward the post office, there's a group of people doing test rides and they do a U-turn in the middle of Weldon's Way and traffic stops. I've talked to at least one of the merchants who has had a truck they've had parallel parked there, get slammed into during these trainings. So it's like, it's not, it would be just as offensive if it were still a grass path with horses. You know what I mean?
I do.
It really, it's like, it's like, in a way, it sort of symbolizes the way that people feel viscerally with the pressure that we have in town. And
Mary Ann and I worked with the moped operators for months, several years ago when she first came here. And we have a pretty good working relationship with them. There are some things that they do that I don't like. And that's a conversation that I need to have with them. One of which, like you said, is stopping somebody in traffic. That bothers me terribly. They have no right to do that. So it's a matter of having conversations with the moped operators to what we will and will not allow. And if I have the help, I intend to be down there a lot just so I can really see what goes on, what time of day, and if there are other solutions that we can put or try that might make things a little bit easier. So for me this summer, it's a learning curve to be down there every day, but me being down there every day, I think will be helpful for them to know that I'm there every day.
Yeah.
I had a question sort of related to that. So when we heard the moped applications, you know, for their license renewals,
Mhm.
on the maps that they showed us of their property layout, they showed training areas that are off of the road that I'm not so sure really exist
Mhm.
off of the map that I was given at the meeting, but we approved those, right? And I certainly voted to approve that license with the hope that that's exactly where the training is gonna happen this year. So I'd like to just say to you that that's my expectation. My expectation is that I was given a map that showed training happening off of Weldon's Way in an area, you know, to the east of Weldon's Way, and I certainly expect that that's where it's going to be, because if it's not, then it's a violation of the
Of their license,
license.
correct.
And if it's a violation of the license, then my understanding is we can remove that license, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, and believe me,
Molly,
I
it's
don't wanna
re-
be at this, my understanding could be completely faulty. But I guess what I'm saying is my expectation is there's not gonna be any training on Weldon's Way. So then secondarily, I'd love to ask you about the text to tip. Because if I were someone driving down Weldon's Way and
Mhm.
I'm told to stop, right? And if I want to say to my daughter, take a photo of that.
Mhm.
Text that to police, so the police can see that this person is stopping us in the middle of the street for, there's no emergency going on. There's no reason why somebody should be stopping us.
Right.
Is that going to be active?
Yes, I actually spoke to Tony from Tip 411 this morning.
Great.
The account that Chief Moynihan had set up, he had it up and activated. Chief Shabbat and Chief Lynch kind of let that go by the wayside. And I'm expecting to have a quote on my desk by Friday for what the cost is going to be. So we should have that up and running
Great.
essentially within the next couple of weeks.
Great.
Can I just follow up on something that Molly just asked? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I think we need to disabuse ourselves of the notion that if somebody takes a picture, we can take away a moped license. That's not going to happen. It's not going to be upheld.
I didn't.
I think revoking the license isn't going to happen from something that simple. I really, really think having the police down there will make a tremendous amount of difference.
I want to follow up on that because here's the thing, you're right, in the instant. However, if there's a source of frustration for me sort of generally around moped issues, it is that we have not done a very good job of building a record of the things that go on.
Mhm.
Now, whether that's an accident occurs, there's, the attendant, sort of mayhem associated with an accident. It's about the people getting, attended to and cared for, and then, that gets dealt with, and there's another call, and there's not a report. That is I can tell you a real challenge that our lawyers have faced. And that is things that we know happen are not we don't have a record. In other words, it tends to be anecdotal rather than factual. So, to me, that's an important long-term governance issue and long-term regulatory issue. We have faced it with liquor licensees as well. One in particular where there is anecdotal information that is in wide circulation, and my own opinion is, I think we all do the same thing. Sometimes over the 90 days or so, we hold our breath and try to hang it together But that doesn't help when we, when something egregious happens and we want to take action, we haven't built a record.
And I agree, and that's part
Yeah.
of, like I was saying to you before, is me being able to be down there and see what goes on there on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
Because I can keep track of it. And it's the same thing, like you said, you hear certain things about certain liquor license establishments or any other one.
Yeah.
And there's no record that you can say, okay, chief, what do you have? What happened all this summer?
Right.
That's a problem. When you go to court and the lawyer asks you for the facts and you don't have the whole list of facts there and you're going, well, I heard. Well, guess that's not going to fly.
Right.
And that is part of it. And, as I said, I'm not an expert on Weldon's Way today. September,
Right.
we'll have a little different,
Yeah.
outlook on things.
Yeah.
But I think that is part of it. When you go to have the license hearings for the moped operators, having a list of this is what was observed all summer long, then you have the ability to make a decision based on things that you have on
Right.
paper sitting in front of you.
Exactly. Thank
And
you.
it
Yeah.
also holds them more accountable if they know that's how this is going to work.
So it's not just Weldon's Way that's a problem. Like, so when there's an accident,
Mhm.
I think, again, this is all based on anecdotal chatter. But it seems as if we need a better pattern of follow through, paperwork. I think what's happened in the past has left sort of our rescue squad people feeling unsupported. When they know that a driver had an accident and the driver is inebriated, and then nothing happens. That moped gets picked up by the moped owner. Nobody decides to press any charges. Nothing happens. And that story has like a million different versions. It happens all the time. I think we need to close that loop. We need to find a way to say, we don't need the moped. I mean, do we need the owner of the moped to press charges?
Nope.
In
Nope.
order for something to
No.
happen?
The difficult part on proving a DUI is you need to prove operation of the vehicle. Right? So if you have 3 people that are sitting there injured, no one wants to say that they were the ones. And I'm not making this as an excuse.
No,
This
no.
this is part of what you need to prove. You need to prove operation of that vehicle. Unfortunately, a lot of our states, the DUI laws are horrendous. It makes it really, really difficult for you to do that job.
Hmm.
Is that an excuse not to do it? No, it's not. But it's sometimes a little more difficult than everyone would like to believe that it is.
I just totally unrelated to the mopeds. That summer that somebody pulled out of Old Island Pub and hit my car, blew 1.6. He was driving cab the next day. And I went to the police station and said, what the heck is going on? And I was told that under the state law, if you refuse to take the test, they can pull the license on the spot. If the guy gets out of his car, falls down the street, apologizes, said it was his fault, he was drunk, blows 1.6, but has agreed to take the test, they have to wait until,
When
is that changed? Because that was 2015.
No, that was there are 2 different charges if you are
And this was state.
intoxicated. One is the RITT, which is the Rhode Island Traffic Tribunal, and that's a refusal. If you refuse to do the breathalyzer, that goes to Rhode Island Traffic Tribunal, and that date is set within 2 weeks of the offense. On that date, if the judge finds that that person refused it and you had legal justification to pull them over, the judge pulls their license that day.
So you get a 2-week
The-
grace period
The
with your.
criminal, correct.
Right.
The criminal charge of it happens, it's usually about 3 weeks after they actually get arrested.
That's interesting. So when under either scenario, you still have your license.
Yep,
And-
until you get before the judge.
Interesting.
And in most cases, I talked to the guy that comes and recalibrates our breathalyzer machine once a month. He and I have been friends for quite a while, and the rate of refusal in Rhode Island is extremely high. Most people know to refuse the test. Because when you have it through the traffic tribunal, and we always charge them both ways. We charge with the refusal and then we charge them with the DUI. The criminal charge typically ends up getting dismissed because they plead to the traffic tribunal, which is a civil charge. They still lose their license and other infractions, but it's not a criminal charge, it's just a civil charge.
Interesting.
Well, in my case, it was the state police handled it.
Hmm.
'Cause that was the one when I went over to the station. I don't think you were not involved in this. Went over to the station and they told me I had to go to Wickford to get a copy of the report. And that was when I talked to Chief Carlone, who got me a copy of the report.
Mhm.
But it's still, the guy was still driving cab the next day.
I have a question. We've been talking about ticketing, parking tickets being able to be paid online. Are we
Mhm.
making any progress on that?
I have 8 other projects right now. I'm slowly picking away at some of those. I would like to have that done. Am I going to guarantee that it's going to get done? I'm not going to do that right now. It's something that's on our radar and we would like to have done. But I have a lot of projects that really need to get taken care of first and foremost.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to something else. I'm sorry. I got sidetracked on my own issues. Isn't the medical center keeping records now of the accidents, at least in numbers, that we didn't have previously?
It's been very.
Yes, I do. Are you interested in anything in particular?
No, it was just the fact that it isn't as unattainable as it used to be.
So I'll just give you some context when you're even talking about your previous matter. So over 7 years, there's been 258 moped accidents that have developed or have been transported to the medical center. So that's more than, there'd be more that were treated and released, but 258 total over the last 7 years. The average age is somewhere around 30 years of age. We vary in how many we get per year over the last 7 years. About 25.4% of everyone that gets brought to the medical center gets flown because of the severity of the injury. So we're tracking those data points pretty clearly. And as of today, I was talking with the Image Trend that runs all EMS for the state. Block Island has the dubious honor of 55% of all Rhode Island's moped accidents happen in Block Island in 2023. And so we could go back and say how many percentage. So when you think about the numbers, now it makes sense given that we're a seasonal population, but 55% of all state reported moped were on Block Island. And so it's not an honor I think we want to have, but it's certainly the severity. And I appreciate the point about the DUIs because I do see that. Many individuals come, they're clearly intoxicated. There seems to be a laissez-faire around the criminality of it. And I think it just perpetuates the idea that this is a free-for-all place to come in the summertime. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it is a perception that I live with, for sure. But we do capture the data and I'll make it available.
That was really my only question, that the numbers aren't, that we have better numbers than we used to have. And I do think that moped figure's a very good one for us to have.
So the things that I can give you on a regular basis, if you request, I have average age. I have scatter graphs of the age of the people at the low end and at the high end. And unfortunately, we get 18-year-olds to 73-year-olds. We have time of day. We have severity on site from EMS, whether or not police is involved or not. And some of it's how people identify it. And obviously how many get flown off and how many get treated.
So
first.
can I ask what happens theoretically? The rescue brings somebody in who's been in a moped or car accident, not necessarily just mopeds. They're clearly way drunk. Do you then call the police, or like how does that all work?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And there's some bioethical lines there.
Yeah,
where-
I'm just
where I would reverse it like this. If
Yeah.
somebody gets on scene and they have a criticality of an injury that requires to come here and they are obviously clinically inebriated, the police should have been involved. And if the police are not involved, which is often the case, then I'm not going to call the police on somebody because it's not a criminal matter at that point for me to treat them.
Right.
And I have no standing, if that's the right term.
Right, I
have no
understand.
standing. But I would say I'm going into my 5th season as not one DUI that I've ever known to be issued to the many, many, many intoxicated, ill-prepared moped operators that we see.
And do those numbers include people who are hit by mopeds?
No, we'd have to run a different query for that. These are just moped operators. And so to me, I think as chief, and I've said personally, congratulations and publicly congratulations on getting the chief position. I think if there's at least one person operating the moped who's drunk, then I don't think we have a problem with who was operating the moped. So I don't think we have to worry about, I can't tell who was operating it. I think if it's a single accident, which is the majority, and there's some that are double, and if you're both drunk, pick it. But even if we just go with the sides of the equation we don't have to worry about or argue about, then single mopeders that are inebriated, yeah, we can track, but we don't track, we do track the people who come in by injury, but we'd have to query it differently.
And is my sense correct that you guys are working together on this particular issue?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're far
great.
closer than we are. We had a nice meeting. We talked about stressors and we talked about how to come together. Behavioral health is part of it as
Yeah,
well. I think we're well
sure.
aligned there. And I think the moped is just a plague on the island. And I think to Martha's comment is just because an incident may be minor doesn't mean that it's not in violation of the rules. And I think when we start arbitrarily saying, well, that's not a big deal, then that's when you're left with, there's no data points to suggest there's an issue. And I felt it my first year when one of the moped operators here in a very coy way was like, well, there was only like 20 accident reports, but there were 56 people that came to the medical center. And they did that knowing that there wasn't an accident report for every.
Right.
So they were being coy about how they
Yeah.
chose their wordsmithing from their lawyers.
Right. Just so you know, I think what Martha was getting at, and Martha and Molly weren't that far apart, I think, but I think whether a particular violation is something someone would deem significant, it's really important to us as we work toward building regulatory environment or a litigation environment, God forbid, or working with state policymakers, making sure that we're tracking all of those things the way you are accidents is really going to be vital to us, because otherwise it is like, oh, they just hate mopeds, or they, I think the best data that I've seen is the data that you guys put together. It is really compelling. The more you have, the better. And it's just, I guess I really appreciate the data that you guys put together.
Sure. And we'll continue to have it. And I
Yeah.
can submit it to you guys.
Tristan, you got anything on that?
I was gonna ask the chief, how's the replacement search going? How's your replacement search? So we need one more officer for the season.
We are gonna need a couple more officers for this season. I have 2 that are actively looking to do lateral transfer somewhere else. We may be in a pickle here right shortly. And it's, we've been saying this all along, the recruiting of people into our profession now is very difficult.
Yeah.
Just read an article yesterday, 2 days ago, that between 2019 and 23, throughout our nation, we've had 36% increase in resignations before retirement. 40,000 officers.
Wow.
In 3 years.
Wow. Wow.
And there's a, multitude of factors.
Yeah.
Money, the general feeling towards police there for a couple of years.
Mhm.
So now it's trying to build that back, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
And where do we stand with the state police for their commitment for the season?
I'm gonna talk to the colonel this coming up week, have a meeting with him
A little premature. Okay.
So, as long as we were talking about mopeds, and I have to say, I think the next monumental tragedy is gonna be these people on some of these scooters that just, they're neither fish nor fowl. They go fast as hell. There's nothing you're gonna do about this, but I know that we, for example, we have an ordinance that prohibits skateboarding in town. And I'm wondering whether, as you think about this, and I'm not putting you on the spot now, as you think about these things, because I've seen single wheel things that people ride around on. I've seen scooters that actually aren't really scooters. They have seats and handlebars. I've seen electric scooters that people stand on and ride. I mean, it's like there's this whole subgenre, and I'm wondering whether you think that we should update what vehicles are allowed in downtown ordinance as a way to help you and the officers.
That might be something to talk to our solicitors about making those changes and making a better definition. Because as you said, it was skateboard. Now there are a dozen different
Now we're
things.
longing for the good old days of skateboard.
And the other scary part to those is that a lot of the people that are using them are workers going back and forth to work.
Right.
And they don't always buy the best ones in the world. And as Tristan knows, New York City has had how many severe fires from these batteries being overheated, overcharged, and it's another concern.
Yes.
They're bringing these things into their rooms and charging them. It's also an issue.
Yes.
Not one that we can necessarily regulate, but
that's
it's
right.
a concern that some of us have.
Yeah.
In the fire department.
Yeah.
Well, and being unregulated, like they don't necessarily have on a helmet or eye protection or closed toe shoes or
I mean, at least mopeds you have to have registered.
Right. But I mean, but there's
Yes.
like driving at night, it's really tricky, especially because every kitchen out here has their kitchen staff wearing black clothing, and then that's what they're wearing home.
Right.
And so you've got people wearing all black clothing in the dark with no lights on their vehicle. They're really hard to see.
I agree.
And sometimes more than one person on something that perhaps was designed for one person. Children,
There's no,
I don't know, there's so many different
if-
variables.
yeah, but if
These are
there's-
all unregulated.
No, I
Yeah.
watching it for the last couple of years.
Of course you have. Yeah.
The one-wheeled scooter that hits a rock and you go flying like Superman. It amazes me that people would actually get on that and ride that around, but they do.
Hey, I saw someone coming up Airport Hill on one of those single wheel things. Watching them come up, they turn and they go into Nathan Mott Park, and they're kind of roll around in Nathan Mott Park, and it's kind of fun. Yeah, unbelievable. Any other questions for the chief? So can I just say something, Paul? Just this meeting alone makes me really glad that you're the chief, because I think this is one of the just sort of this kind of talking about stuff is what I think ultimately leads us to consensus and solutions on these things. And I feel like we may not have had that for a while, and it's just thank you.
And I appreciate that. And you're right, because there are things that we look at. We talked about Weldon's Way before.
Right.
I brought up at one point, we closed off that little section of Chapel Street.
Yes.
People are going to crucify me for saying this.
I'm in.
I think we should try it.
Yes, I agree.
And for several different reasons. One of where they sectioned it off in front of Eli's, they were able to put a service truck, the Norton's or Cisco or one of those trucks. They could make a parking space in there, and that keeps that truck off of Water Street, Weldon's Way, Chapel Street.
Great idea. Mary Ann, what do we have to
I-
do? in
I
order
just-
to- Or Mike?
Paul and I've had
I'm
that
sure we're
conversation,
gonna have.
and we
people
need to
that-
bring it up to the council. I said, probably in the March meeting, bring that up
Great,
to the council.
terrific.
We can even do it in February.
Yeah,
But I think that, and I spoke to Mary Ann, if there was an easy solution to Weldon's Way, it would be done. And we wouldn't be standing here talking about it. But there are little things that we can try, and sometimes some of you have been here for a really, really long time. And you're like, well, that's not how we do it. That's not how we want to do it.
yeah, yeah.
Well, sometimes we need to try some of these things and say, you know what? That idea didn't work. Okay, it didn't work. So
Right.
let's move on and try something else. But if we keep doing the same thing, we're gonna have the same results, the same complaints, and we're just gonna be chasing our tails.
Right.
So-
Oh, for Paul. Thank you.
Wait,
Yes.
can I go back to one thing?
you.
And I'm just wondering now that, like, the ticketing,
Designation.
paying
Oh,
tickets
good.
online.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
I don't think.
Can we go back to that for 1 second? Can I ask, do you think there's a way that the town could support you in that? Like, is there a town,
I missed what you
saying
said.
the, paying a ticket online?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, I understand that it's something that you're saying you want to solve, but you're
Mhm.
in likelihood not going to be able to solve before this season. I do think it's important to get that out of the dispatch office.
Mhm.
Our dispatch office is understaffed, and to have your dispatch person who doesn't have anybody else in the office with them, get up and deal with an angry person who has to pay a parking ticket is
Mhm.
ridiculous. Like, and they should be doing their job. And of course, that is part of their job, right? But can we make it not part of their job by just doing this simple thing that technology enables? Do we have some component of the town technology that could assist with this?
I think what we talked about doing with this is it's a complete automated process. When they even do the tickets are automated, and that's part of the software that leads to the online payment. So what Paul said, he has 8 projects in his hands. Some of the things, I'm going to give him some kudos here, that he hasn't talked about. He has the Power DMS, which is a whole new, recording mechanism and also training mechanism I put in my recent report. He has the Code Red that he's currently working on. We'll probably have Code Red on the website hooked up so people can sign up for the Code Red. He's working on a tip situation. He's currently involved with, his staff is currently involved with actively doing background checks of 2 potential recruits that will head in, the applications are due in May to head into the academy if they go through the background checks and they're successful. So there's a lot of things going on. I think Paul has to prioritize things. I'd rather get some of the other things going and let's see how this stuff falls out. And because you're going to look at with this, I mean, right now we're still doing paper tickets. We have to get away from that. So it's a complete implementation of a whole ticketing system. So I'd rather have them look at the software, work with other police departments, what they've used that's been successful for them, and then implement. So I agree with them that some of the other priorities he's working on it is probably best. And I know it's not what we want to hear. It just gives us one more summer together.
Yeah, thanks.
And I do hear you, and I just, as I said, we have a mountain that we need to climb, and we can't get there in one giant step. We would like to, but being realistic, some of those things you just can't accomplish right away. And it's one of the things that I said when Mary Ann and I talked about this, and I brought it up to her about trying to do this online, trying to bring this so that it's automated, is the redundancy in the ticketing process and the added paperwork that it puts on dispatch and the administrative assistant, Beth. I would love to get away from that. Sometimes there are some things that we need to prioritize within that department that really need our attention first and foremost, from a policy procedure and state accreditation and some other things that really need that attention first. Yes, would I love to do it today? Absolutely. I would like to prioritize some of the other things.
Well, I've always said, I think we have to let the police prioritize. They know what's important and how to do things, and I'm not gonna get into that. I think what you said about Weldon's Way, the same thing is about everything. Little, if you, one thing here, one thing there, one place, you try to fix the whole thing at once, we all know it's not gonna happen.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you so much, Paul.
You're welcome.
And Tom, thank you for coming. That's important that beautiful. All right, Mike Shea, you got 7 minutes.
Mansion,
Mansion?
They're really bad about those storms.
Thank you.
good.
Just so you know, the grader is down, so we're using other pieces of machinery to get things done that we normally wouldn't, so.
What's the matter with our grader?
Error code on it that, we can't fix here. They're gonna come here. Not a big deal. They'll be coming up. Okay, get it, but we just have to improvise.
Check engine light, exactly.
Yeah, that nobody seemed to know what it was. Seeing as I have short time, I got a bevy of different things here.
I was
you wanna
joking,
just-
Mike.
If you just wanna throw them at me?
What do you,
however
what would you like to talk about today?
Nothing on this. list.
Nothing on that.
Let me start with Thomas property.
Yes,
Probably not this newspaper, but the next newspaper, the Thomas House should be advertised for free before it is demoed. Tom has been working with the contractors, electricians, plumbers, get them all lined up prior to its arrival.
Can I ask how that works? So Connecticut Valley Homes brings out the panels or the box, brings out the boxes. Those get bolted together and then the trades come in and do the wiring and plumbing? Is that how they work? I have no, I'm so sorry, but I'm just.
Real quick. The boxes come, and they have Mary points. So all the plumbing is put together in those Mary points, and then we bring in a trade to hook the services into those Mary points. And all the piping within the walls is already in.
Gotcha.
Same with electrical.
I see.
heating.
And painting too.
No.
But they did the primer on the house I'm in, it never did the second coat. So
Can you talk to us about the visitor center? Because I know we've been working on that and it's.
Yep.
important.
January 12th, I believe, I had a meeting right here with the Renowski family. And Shirlene joined in, she was in a previous conversation with them, the previous town manager, then COVID hit and everything.
Yeah,
stopped.
right.
Bottom line is, very good meeting, very receptive. They're very anxious to do something. We bounced off a lot of different ideas, needs down there. I think we all pretty much know what they are. That has to be, the bathrooms need to be larger. We need waiting rooms. We need foot
Yeah.
washes. Just needs to be upgraded.
Yeah.
So it was a very productive meeting. The Renowskis went back, and are gonna come back to us with a design.
Oh, great. Terrific.
That was, just about a month ago.
Yeah.
It's like that. So I anticipate hearing from them.
Thank you, Mike.
Soon, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
We'll take on the permitting and go to the meetings for them. They don't want that part of it.
Sure.
We'll
Yeah.
take care of that. So it's moving.
That's great.
Yep, and like I say, we're all pretty much on board with what the needs are down there. Been working with Block Island Conservancy and Sean at Block Island Recycling Management. Gonna do a test pilot for composting, food scrap, composting down there at the burn. There was a site visit on Friday from the company. Excited to see how that works.
I have to say, you should be proud of this because that has been notional for a long time. And it has started to generate momentum because of your work and your work with Sean and Dory. And I think it's a really important step for the island.
There's basically
Really
things that
great.
happened. Initially, it was gonna be outside, which was going to be a structure built over it, so.
Yep.
Sean has got room inside now, So.
Great.
It's a savings there, things are sort of.
Yeah.
A little more on Friday. Milltail Pond, right over here, I know, talking about the leak, go down there. Right now, it's great, I was underneath the road last week, I think it was, I went into the culvert, and first of all, it's always leaked, prior to the road being redone. This particular time, since the road's been done, it was a big one, and it was bottoming out of the pond in the summertime. We put in about 4 yards of clay into that area and hole that we know where it is. Right now, it's holding. It's
Great.
doing good. There are other little ones around it, but the big major one has been clogged up. I've been talking with Jim Jeremy about that, and like I say, it's good now, in the hopes that it stays that way.
Wait,
There
when you
are
say
other
hole,
methods.
a hole in what?
The bank.
Oh,
The
okay.
bank. That road is more rubble. The whole thing, you know, was built a couple 100 years ago, so it's porous through there. But if there's water getting through where it's not supposed to, it has the potential of undermining.
To undermine the road.
Yeah.
So it's not going through the culvert, it's going through other places.
It is going through the culvert. By far the majority of it is going through the culvert now, where it's supposed to go over the sleuthway. In the summertime, it wasn't getting to that.
Oh.
So the leak has been built and it's working correctly. The way it should. Long term, don't know, but Jim does have some other options. Supposedly there's a gel product that can be actually injected into the hole. He was gonna look into that. So, which would ideally be done in the summertime when the water is slow.
That just made me think of a conversation that we had at one of our recent meetings, Mike, that I'd like to follow up on, which is really having a group get together and talk about the whole parking lot, town beach, you know, what does that look, particularly now that we have some planning dollars and can really look at that. It seems to me that that is an opportunity to really do something. And I wouldn't presume to speak for the Sea Level Rise Committee, but my sense is that they're interested in doing that, and you know, now with the acquisition of those Gassner lots, maybe there's really an opportunity to think differently about that stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, that whole area is multifaceted.
Yes,
There's
I know,
so many
it's-
different things. That are covered.
yeah,
It's not just that the parking lot's flooded out.
Right.
And raise it and poof, everything's all there.
Y-
That's
yeah.
not gonna happen.
no,
There's
you
a lot of different issues going on there. A lot of
Yes.
different issues creating- Making it.
yeah, no, I really appreciated your input when we were talking about that the other night.
I got 1 minute.
Yeah.
Recent
I didn't
storm
mean to be
damage,
joking.
the dunes have really taken a hit. I think most of us have seen that.
Yeah,
The revetment directly across from the beachhead is real bad.
yeah,
One more storm and we're gonna lose the rest of that sand. But people have to remember too, that is a man-made dune, or it's not even a dune. It's the sand on there is aesthetic. It's not doing anything. It doesn't
Yeah.
build up or anything. But the rocks are definitely getting moved around, which each year now we have been doing repairs to it.
right.
Putting things back into place. The base of the bluffs, we know about that. That's been washed out. DEM has been made aware. Time is running out there. I don't know what's gonna happen for the summer. They've got to come up with some sort of plan down there. Otherwise, we're gonna have disasters down.
Did we close that one summer? I remember the signs, but I don't remember if it was in the summer or not.
I don't recall that.
It was quite a while,
Yeah.
2000,
Yeah.
man, around 2002.
You're correct.
Long
Closed
time.
it.
You are correct, at the base. They kept the stairs open, but they just shut off, they roped off the section beyond the platform to the beach.
Huh.
Mike, I have a question, other communities, without saying their names, how come we don't actively push our dunes back after storms?
Push them back.
Yeah, usually in other communities, they'll push the sand dune back after a major washout. I mean, there's dozers in just on the other side,
Yeah.
pushing the dunes back after this last storm.
Most of our sand gets washed up to the north. The only sand that we really have to use is what blows into the parking lot. And we use that, or we have been using that above the revetment, right there. I think we've got a different situation because a lot of beaches on the mainland face south. Ours face east, and ours seem to generate enough sand prior to the summer that we don't necessarily need to. I mean, it naturally comes back, whereas I think other beaches don't necessarily get that way. I think just the way they're turned, I can use Musquamacut as an example. Musquamacut, they always put their sand right back on the beach because they're not generating more sand. Actually, they truck sand in too there.
Interesting.
I know the beach looks horrible right now, like it'll never come back again. It'll be back. It'll be fine for the summer.
Yeah, I can only say I've been following South County and I just feel like saying to these people, have you never had storms before? Like they're all losing their minds over there. And I know that they built on also, I'm not gonna get into it, but no, years ago I used to walk the beach every day and it normally grows from the north because the sand goes north and then it builds out. That's why Mansion is the first to come.
It does come back. One other thing that we just came upon yesterday on Spring Street, where it washed out in 91 and again in 12 with Superstorm Sandy. A huge section of that break wall is collapsed. It's
Oh, really?
yeah, maybe 20 feet wide.
Wow.
Just gone. And there are pictures of it that we sent up to the state today, and it just reminded them of the history of that's washed out twice, and same thing across from the beach, that's washed out twice.
Mike, is that by the corner or is it further down?
It's further down. It's right
Yikes.
right across from that.
Because by the corner is where I'm expecting it to go.
That's more foot traffic. Water doesn't get up to that, it doesn't flow off the road off.
But at that spot south of there?
Yes, and it's actually where it collapsed was in between the drains, so it's just a complete separate
Wow.
area.
And then what about, and that's where it was undermined during Sandy, right? But like it was just gone underneath the road, right?
Yes, it's to the guardrail right now. The basis of the guardrail is shown.
Wow.
Yes.
And then what about the new revetment on West Beach? Because I walked West Beach today and it was pretty remarkable. But we didn't walk down that far. Is that one okay?
Yes. Yep, I've been working with Jim on that one. No, it's not. Okay, it's not horrible. The southern part of that is definitely worse than the north. The further north you go on that, it's not as bad. But Jim is working on that to kind of come up with a plan as far as bringing boulders over again to replenish that.
So Mike, is Spring Street on the CRMC? Are we waiting for approval before we fix the problem?
I'm sorry, on what?
On Spring Street, what are you doing with that one? Are we actively fixing?
That's
that problem, or are
a
we-
state road, and that's gonna be, it's a big project. It's not something that, there's gonna have to be rocks brought in.
Okay.
Yeah, brought over. We don't have the material here to fix it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Major undertaking. Mansion bathrooms, as we all know.
They look
in-
fabulous.
Thank you. It's gonna look better. We got finished work to do, of course, down there. The electric has been hooked up. We've got slight little changes to make, things like that. Landscaping, gonna put in a little retention water pond there. Right now, the water's getting to the building. Just little finished work that's all lined up there.
I think that's gonna settle right in. It's in a good
Well,
spot.
I think it's gonna be
It's
fine.
really nicely done.
Unfortunately, there was an entire tree that we left on purpose, and worked around,
Yeah.
lawn,
Yep.
hidden.
I know exactly.
One of
what
the
you mean.
storms took it down.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Big effort to keep. it going.
Yeah.
Storms like that.
Yeah, what is it? Man plans, God laughs.
Yeah. Dredging of Old Harbor, that's been held up. Kate has been working with Army Corps of Engineers and our engineer Gus. We've missed the window of opportunity to do it January 31st. We're getting an emergency permit to dredge that. He's coming out tomorrow. The engineer, I'm going to meet on site, Kate, myself, and whoever is coming. Which is great. I love it that they come out and put eyes on this.
Yes.
Exactly what we're dealing
Yes,
with.
yes.
Got a few questions for him. I've got a theory of why
Yeah,
it's filling in so often all the time now. I want to run it past.
it's the cabanas at Ballards.
Yep.
That was a joke.
So,
For the record, Your Honor, that
So
was.
that's tomorrow. Breed property has been completed this year. As you know, it's 3 large parcels. We do it in a one section each year. Kim's still here. And Bill Kennelly did a great job. After they did that, the road crew went in, did the walls, to clear the walls.
It looks beautiful.
It's
It
gorgeous.
does. It looks fabulous.
So pretty.
Yeah, it's
So
incredible.
next year it will be the northwest
Right.
lot, which is a triangular shaped one, sort of closest to the White House settlement time. Working with the water and sewer departments closely on what has been a problem for years, is just far as road cuts and into the right of ways, the shoulders where these utilities been put in, and then it's not cleaned up.
Yeah,
The finish work has been terrible. So we're all on board and working close to
Great.
to hold them responsible, contractors, to clean up their.
you know, that raises something that I made a note to myself I wanted to say, because unless we bump into Joe or the folks who work on the crew, I don't feel like we frequently enough thank them and say what a terrific job they do. They are so clearly on top of stuff.
Very professional.
It is really, really impressive. It doesn't matter where I go on the island, and I bring my dog all different kinds of places every day. It's just, there's always somebody working, and it's really impressive. So if you would just pass that along to those guys, I'd really appreciate it.
Quick ones. Hazardous waste day. Still nothing set in stone. Middle of the guy at Rhode Island Resource.
It's crazy.
Just waiting.
Yeah.
I have made it very clear that we're in need
Yeah.
desperately. So that is still in the works. I hope to hear back from him by the end of the week. Gracie's Cove improvements, that's a mess. I always think of that place as a funnel. It's just all
Yeah.
water coming from all different directions right in that area. Applied for a grant, spring of 24, so this spring we should hear something like that. Andy's Way, the step has been fixed. We've added a step to it. And we've just come to the conclusion that it's just gonna have to be fixed periodically throughout the year. The storms coming up are, moving things around. So it's just on the list of the guys.
You just made Kim Gaffett summer.
Yeah, just watch your step. And the privet bushes, oh my God, they've been cut back. Looks beautiful.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can
Mansion
actually
Road-
park there?
Mansion Road pillar. Tom and I are gonna put together an RFP for that to go out to be repaired. Basically, it's gotta be taken down, footing, rebuilt, replica.
Oh, great.
It's done with the design of
Uh-huh.
it, measurements. I'm sorry? Yeah.
The original photographs.
Sorry.
The original photographs.
Do you know somebody
Yes.
who might have one?
Original photograph, and I took measurements with Doug Gilpin circumference. And the old photograph with the guy standing in front of it, and we estimated how much it has settled or how much has been raised. It's about 2 feet, plus it came off the top, so did the dimensions
Beautiful.
of the actual height of it. So that's the intention, is it gets built back the way that it originally was.
It hasn't been made, it really wasn't my option to.
Yes, that's what I got.
Thank you so much,
got
Mike.
So can I ask you, because we kind of blew you off topic at the beginning. to go back to Thomas House.
Mhm.
Can you, what's the timeline on that?
I think we're looking at May, right? We're still on time for that. Yeah,
That is fabulous.
And then,
you know,
Is it a duplex?
I don't want to say definitely May, but it's looking good.
Four-
right, so we're looking
Weather
at this
pending,
year.
You know, all that.
4 units.
Oh, great. For completion or not, or arrival of the pieces?
Completion, right? Yes.
I think completion is
Either
more
or.
like July.
I didn't say which year in May.
Right?
The boxes are due.
Mike
That
says
was
I want to
great.
keep it loose, and I'm like, I want to pin you down.
No. Boxes are scheduled to ride mid-April. At least that's what they've told us.
Of 28, yeah.
Mike, I've lived through the Thomas property from the day I walked down the street.
Exactly.
And hopefully we're really gonna push them, I hope.
And the visitor center, that just sort of, that hasn't really started. They haven't really,
Oh, it started.
we started conversationally, but like, we're not into the planning process, so we don't have a timeline on that yet.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, it's in the works and they're,
It's more progress than we've had in a long time.
And then,
Thank
not to be such a nudge, I'm sorry, but, the composting, the Investo composting, is there a timeline yet on that, or what are we looking at there?
yes, if everything goes smooth, I think they're looking at this summer.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And by the way, it's really important to note that that would be funded by the Block
Oh,
Island
absolutely,
Conservancy.
yes.
You know,
I
this
see
is,
that Dory's
this
very,
is,
Yeah, that's bad. I didn't mention it.
Yeah.
this is a real gift to the community.
fantastic.
Well, apparently they are again.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you,
What?
Mike. Motion to adjourn? Second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.